What's up, Notjust developers? Welcome back to a new live stream. Today, we're gonna learn about data fetching in React Native, and specifically, we're gonna learn about TanStack Query. So this is going to be a masterclass on using TanStack Query to fetch remote data in your React Native application. I've got the idea for this tutorial. We used it in a lot of tutorials before, but today I said let's do it more, dive deep into TanStack Query, because I saw in that state of React Native that it ranked in two categories, both in one of the best state management libraries and also for data fetching. So that's what we're gonna do today, and to make this tutorial more fun, instead of doing a lot of to-do list applications that you are used to on the internet, we're actually gonna build a real application. We're gonna build a movie application using the TMDB API. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. We're gonna work a little bit on the UI, but the focus is actually going to be on data fetching, on learning how to run queries with TanStack Query, how to run mutations, how to synchronize data, cache it, invalidate, and manage the whole remote data of your application. So if you're ready, we can get started, and let's roll the intro. Hi everyone in the live chat. Actually, before we get started, I want to say a big thank you to StepZen, to IBM StepZen, the sponsor of today's video. If you're not familiar with StepZen, every time I have to build a GraphQL API, I go to StepZen because it's really easy to set up a GraphQL API if you have already a data source. All it takes is running a CLI command, and it can connect to different data sources like SQL backends, REST databases, other GraphQL databases, and with it you can create a unified graph for your data. If you're interested to learn more about that, you can check out some of the tutorials that we have done on this channel using StepZen. One of the best one is the workout tracker, and there we used a MongoDB as the data source. We created the GraphQL API using IBM StepZen, and we built the mobile application using React Native. So thank you very much, IBM StepZen, for sponsoring this video, and back to the tutorial. So what I want to do is, of course, start by initializing a new Expo project. Let's go ahead, open a terminal, navigate to the folder where you keep your projects, and let's initialize the Expo project using npx create expo up at latest to take the latest version, and we're gonna do here movie up. Let's also do a -t to select a template, because today I don't feel like installing and setting up Expo router. I would rather scroll down here until we see navigation TypeScript. If we select this navigation TypeScript and press enter, we're gonna create a new Expo application based on a template that already has Expo router set up and a couple of tabs that we will be able to use throughout the tutorial. And because the focus today is not gonna be necessarily on the UI, I decided, okay, let's go with a template. So after a couple of seconds, that template should be installed, and then we can open it up in Visual Studio Code. Hello everyone in the live chat. I saw already some questions. Why not version 5? We're actually gonna use TanStack Query version 5. We're gonna change it on the thumbnail, don't worry. Where are you joining us from? Did you get your coffee? Aditya, hello. Rogelio, hi. How's it going with your project, Rogelio? Why is it taking so long today? Probably I should use Ban or some other tools, but I always try to stick with the most standard tools in order for everyone to at least know them. So npx is something that you get just by having Node.js installed, and that's the only thing that you will need to follow this tutorial. So now we see that our project is ready. Let's go ahead and open it up in Visual Studio Code. I open it up with a shortcut, but you can simply open Visual Studio Code and navigate to your project to open it from there. Let's go ahead and open a terminal in Visual Studio Code and start the development server side, start the Metro bundler. Once we see this menu, that means that our bundler is ready to run our application on some devices. I'm gonna press I to run it on iOS simulator because I have a simulator here on the right. You can press A if you have an Android emulator, or if you don't have this, because in this case you'd need to have Xcode or Android Studio. So if you don't have emulators or simulators on your computer, the easiest way is going to download the Expo Go application from the market on your physical device. It's available both for Android and iOS, and scan this QR code and you're gonna have application running on your physical device. So yeah, now actually our application is running and we see it here on the, that's right, yes, on the right. And we have tab 1 and tab 2. On the tab 1, we also have a model here. So that's the template from Expo for a couple of tabs. And let's go ahead and check out some of the source code. The screens, they all are in the app directory. And this is an important directory because we are working with Expo router. So all the files that you see here, they are either screens or layouts. So they are related to our navigation system. Expo router is a file-based navigation system. So for example, by simply creating the index and 2 inside the tabs, we get these tabs at the bottom. And if we open, for example, index, that's going to be our tab 1 here. So you can change, for example, the text from tab 1 to hello there. If you do that, and of course, without editing anything else, you're gonna see right away the application updating on the right. Okay, perfect. Let's go ahead and clean up a little bit our template. So I'm gonna start with the index file from tabs. This is the first screen here. Let's go ahead and remove the edit screen info from here, and even like the text and the view. I'm only gonna leave a container, and that means that I can remove some styles from here as well. Only leave a container style. That's gonna be it, and we can also clean up a bit the imports. Having a clean code is going to be easier for us to navigate it. So now tab 1 is an empty screen. Let's go ahead with tab 2, do the same. Let's remove everything from inside the container. Let's remove the styles and also remove the unnecessary imports like the text and that edit screen. So now both our tab 1 and tab 2 are a blank screen. If we want to change the names of our tab, that's going to happen in the underscore layout of the tabs folder. This underscore layout is the shared layout between the two tabs, and the shared layout is actually this tab navigation at the bottom. So if we scroll down, don't get confused, like if you don't have a lot of experience, don't get confused from everything here. We're not gonna get into a lot of details, but the only thing that I want you to do is find the title tab 1, and we can change here to movies. That will automatically change both the title and the tab name to movies. And if we change the second one from tab 2 to, let's say, watchlist, that's going to change it here as well. We can go ahead even adjust a bit the tab bar icon. So font awesome. To do that, just to make it like pretty, let's go ahead and look for Expo vector icons. There is a directory of all the vector icons from Expo, and we can filter based on font awesome just to make it easier for us to use. And maybe let's say movie, or maybe list, or maybe home screen. Let's go with a home. home for the first icon, and for the second one, an I or something like that for the watch list. Watch list, popcorn maybe. No, okay. Were saved. I don't know. Let's do this one. I. So that means that I'm gonna go ahead and where I see the title movie, that's the configuration of our first tab. So you're gonna see the tab bar icon with the name code. Let's change this one to simply home. And let's scroll down for the tab 2. This is going to be where we will change from code to I. So we're gonna have 2 tabs with different icons. Okay, perfect. That's good. I think, and we're gonna work most of the times we're gonna work here in this tab in the index file for the list of movies, and I also want to display a list of movies that are in your watch list. We're also going to learn how to run mutations to add movies in the watch list, to remove movies from the watch list. So it's going to be good to see how everything synchronizes and caches between different screens and different requests to our API. So now that we have more or less a clean project, we can clean it even more, but I don't want to do that. Let's go ahead and do git add, git commit, clean template. So this was cleaning the template. Now the next step is going to be, let's go ahead and have a look at the data source. Let's have a look at the API that we're gonna use in this video. Before I do that, let me check the live chat to see if... Okay, a lot of people are joining today. Hello, Jack from Canada. Hello, Ariel, Aditya, Rogelio, Alvin. A lot of work. Oh, Catalina is here. Catalina, people are asking why we have on the thumbnail V4. We are gonna use V5. This is the latest version of TanStack Query, so we're gonna have to change it. Anyway, let's continue. And as I said, let's have a look at the data source that we're gonna use for this tutorial. We're gonna use the movie DB dot, how is it called? The movie DB. This is the API, the moviedb.org. And we provide a free API, but for that you just simply have to create an account. Creating an account is free. After you do that, make sure to what? We need to go somewhere to the developer account. Where? API. In the footer, we should find API. And it redirects us to the developer.themoviedb.org, and from here we can go ahead to the API reference, or maybe here at the top for authentication. And yeah, if you are signed out, it's going to, if you go to the authentication page under the API reference, there will be a button that will open the page to get an API key. If you go there, well, it still redirects here for some reason. Come on. Yeah, we need to press login to use your API keys. But I'm already logged in. I'm pretty sure you're gonna find it out, because when you're not logged in, it redirects you correctly. For me, it's already a bit different. Edit profile settings, maybe under the settings. API. And here, you're going to be able to create a an API key. So under your account settings, you're going to be able to create it here. After you have that, make sure to sign in also inside the documentation page under the developer.themovie.org. And if we go to, for example, the API reference, and we start by, let's say, sending a test authentication request, if we go to this page and press try it, we should see a response of success true, which means that our authentication token is correctly set up here in this documentation website. So that means that we can also go ahead and query the what? I'm gonna scroll down to find some movies, movie list, or in the Discover. In the Discover, should we get the movie? Find movies using over 30 filters. Or maybe to take some like top rated movies. Let's go under the movie list, under the top rated, and let's try to press here, try it. And we're gonna see that as a result, we get an array of movies with data about those movies. So this is probably the first API that we are going to request, and first data that we're going to fetch. By sending a GET request to this URL, we get a list of movies ordered by rating. So what I'm going to do is I want to first do everything, not everything, but at least fetch some data without using TanStack Query, in order for you to see what are going to be the benefits when we move it to TanStack Query. So initially, we're going to simply fetch this data manually, like with a let's say, without any additional libraries, simply using state variables, useEffect, and the fetch API. So to do that, what we have to do? Well, there is this. We can actually move from shell example to notejust at the top, and here, I'm not sure if this fetch is exactly what we need, but we can try it. So let's go ahead in the request code here. Let's copy it. Let's bring it in our application. And what I'm gonna do is actually I'm going to create a new folder for our, let's say, services. Or let's call it API. In the API, let's create a new file for movies.ts. Here we are going to store methods that will help us fetch data from the API. So let's paste the code that we copied from here, from Node.js, and adjust it a little bit because we are not using Node.js. So for example, we don't have to import fetch. Fetch is by default available in Hermes. Here is the URL, options, and the fetch URL. Let's go ahead and put this into a function. Let's call this function get or fetch top rated movies. This is going to be an arrow function, and let's put the code here. Now we need to call this function somewhere. So what I'm gonna do is I will also open the tab 1, the home screen. I will not change anything here, I want to just see like console logs, and then we're gonna think how to update this code. Let's go to tabs, index, and here in tab 1, what I want to do is when this page renders, the first time it renders, I want to fetch the movies. For that, we're gonna need the useEffect, so useEffect, and the useEffect should have an empty dependency list because we want to fetch movies only once. Now let's call fetch top rated movies, which is a function that should be imported. I'm not sure why it doesn't give me an error, but this function should be imported from our API movies. But first, we have to export it, of course. Export const fetch top rated movies. And from our tab 1 screen, now we can go ahead and import it from API movies. So we're not going to see anything, but I'm interested in looking at the console. So we actually, if I open it up, we already see some data. That means that the request worked correctly. So if I go ahead here, what I actually want to do is, instead of console logging this JSON, I want to return the array of movies from this method, because we will need it in our screen. To do that, I'm going to refactor this .van approach of handling promises to an async await. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define that this function is an async function. And now I can comment this out, and we will start step by step. The first line is like we need to fetch it. So let's fetch it. Let's store this result in response is equal to await fetch. Now we are going to send the request to our URL with these options, and we're going to have a response. Then we're going to look at the second line in the .van. What it does, it takes the response and turns it into JSON. And I can also do it res like this. So let's do it like JSON equal to response.json. But this is also an asynchronous function, so we need to do await here. The first line with .van is console log. We can do console log right now for JSON. And the catch error, this should happen by putting everything into a try. We put everything in the try. And in the catch block, catch error, we define what happens here, like for example, console error. Now we transform at .van to async await. And what we can also do is return back. Let's just check if everything is still working. So if I press C in the terminal to clean the console and then R to reload the application, we're going to see again the response. Whenever you're dealing with a lot of JSON, what you can do is do JSON.stringify, provide there the JSON in this method, and provide a second parameter null, and the third one too, for how many spaces do you want to tabulate the response. And now if you look in the terminal, the data is going to be more structured. So you're going to see easier what is the actual shape of your data. If we scroll up, we're going to see that the data is an object. It has page 1 and an array inside the results. So what I'm interested in is actually in this array of results. So that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to return from this method. Return JSON.results. And I'm going to remove the console log. And this is actually ERR. So that's our method. Let's now go back to our tab one screen where we have our movies. And here the fetch top rated movies is an asynchronous function. So again, we would have to do const await, const movies equal await if you want to do it using async await. But in a lot of cases in these scenarios, I actually prefer a .van, because the problem with await is that we cannot have await functions right away inside useEffect. We have to declare a separate function and call that function after creating it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply say that the result of this function, I want to store it into a state variable. So let's do it like this. Or actually, you know what? No, let's actually do it async await, because it's going to we're gonna have to do some changes. So let's do here the function that will actually look a bit ugly, but it's going to be called, let's say, fetch movies is equal to an async function that will call this fetch movies. But now we can do movies equal await. Now we can do await here because we are inside an async function. And we should not forget to call this declare function here. So this is a little trick of how to run async, to execute async functions inside the use effect by wrapping it into async function and calling it here. So what are these movies? Let's do console log movies to see what's going on. If I check the logs, we're gonna see that these movies is an array of data. Perfect. Let's go ahead and store these movies in a state variable. For that, we're gonna need to define the state of movies, set movies, which is equal to an use state imported from React, and we're gonna initialize it with an empty array. Now, after we fetch them from here, what we want to do is set them in state. Set movies with these movies. Okay, that's good. Now what I want to do is, let's go ahead and use a flat list to render these movies. A flat list helps us render lists of data. So the data that we want to render in the flat list is called movies, because the movies is going to be an array of movies, obviously. And the second function that we need to provide is render item. Render item will receive the item that it's currently rendering, and we should, for example, render something here. I'm gonna render a view, and inside that view, I want to render a text with the title of a movie. So I will do it like this. Let's not forget to import text from React Native, like this. And the text will display the item dot, I think it should be title. Not exactly sure, but we can also check like the structure here. So it has ID, original title, and title. Let's do title. So just like that, we already see some titles on the screen. You see? Perfect. That's exactly what we want. So that's our approach using fetch. But usually, before the movies are actually fetched from the database, now it's very fast. But on a low network, that might take more time. So imagine that the fetch movies takes more time. So if I'm gonna refresh it in this way, we're gonna see a blank screen. Well, we don't want that. So instead of that, we want to render a loading indicator, where in some cases you want to render some, how's it called? Skeleton loading animation. So in that case, you need to handle a state of the loading state. For example, you're gonna have is loading, set is loading. It's going to be use state, and you're gonna initialize the set is loading with false. And what you want to do is you want to set the is loading when you start loading the movies. For example, here, set is loading to true. And when you finish that, when the fetch top rated movies is called, and after you set the movies, what you want to do is you want to set is loading to false. That's a very usual thing that you might do. Then, using this is loading state, you can check here. If is loading, don't render a blank screen, but rather render, let's say for now, an activity indicator, which is a spinner and it's imported from simply React Native. So if, for example, I never put it back to false, just for you to see, and refresh, if it's loading, but I never put it to false. What? I need to return here. So not just call it, but I need to return an activity indicator. So if I do that and never turn it to false, as long as we are fetching the data, we're gonna see this spinner. It's just for showing you the use case, but of course in some cases it's much better. It's aligned, centered, and so on. For now, it's okay. So that's the loading state that is part of data fetching, as part of data fetching. Now the question is, what if the top rated movies returns an error? What if there is an error? Well, for that we will have another state variable with the error. So if that happens, we will set the error, and then we will check here if it's error, render the error, and so on. So as you can see, it's already getting out of hand. Like, it's already a lot, right? But actually, let's do the error handling. So to do the error handling properly, I think I'm gonna do it here in the fetch movies, because in our API here, I think I'm not going to do the try catch. I'm gonna let the error, if the error happens, I'm gonna let the function throw it. And also, I think we can also handle the response to check if it's okay or not. So if response dot, how is it called? Okay. Or let's say rather, if response is not okay, let's simply throw a new error, failed to fetch movies. Failed to fetch movies. If, for example, we're gonna remove or comment out the authorization, I think in that case, let's comment it out like this, like completely. I think in that case, we're gonna have an error. But the error, you see it here at the bottom, possible unhandled promise rejection. So currently we are not properly handling the errors. What we should do is, in our component, we will have to create an error state, set error. And guys, just to make sure that everyone is on board, now I'm showing the do-it-yourself way. And in a second, we're going to replace it with TanStack Query, and we're going to see the benefits of using TanStack Query, because everything that we do right here is going to be replaced by a couple of lines of code from TanStack Query. So stay with me for a second. As I was saying, to handle the error, we need a state for that. So use state. It's going to be, let's say, an empty string because there is no error. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this await fetch top rated movies in a try catch, because that's where the error might happen. And in the catch error, I can set this error inside the state. So let's do error dot message. Now what I can do is I can check if it's loading, show the activity indicator, or maybe not the message, but the whole error. And I will initialize it with null maybe. If it's loading, show activity indicator, but if you're not loading, and if there was an error, let's show to the user some feedback. Let's give on the UI some feedback. And that feedback can be a simple text with an error message. We're saying, error.message. So if I do like that and reload, we see now failed to fetch movies. Because from the movies, that's what we are throwing here if a response is not okay. And yeah, that's also the error handling. Now if I'm gonna go back and uncomment these two lines with my token and then refresh, is it still failed to fetch movies? Come on, why? Console log response. Response dot okay. False. Why is it false? Let me double check something. Where use is fetching. There was. One second. Response dot okay. Why is the response not okay? Maybe I can work with, if I don't have this check at all, it still fails. Something wrong with my API key? What happened with my API key? (401). Hey, I put back the authorization. Maybe I have a typo in my request there in the authorization, because if I do try now, it works. So let me copy options again. Options, remove, copy, paste, save. Now it works. Yeah, maybe I added some letters here. So is the thing with OK working? I think it should work, because right now it passes it. It doesn't throw this error. But if I'm going to comment out this, it's going to throw it here. Fail to fetch movies. Perfect. So let's go back. And again, I'm doing some removing options, copying from here. I'm not sure what's happening there when I comment it out, but let's put it back, reload. Again, fail to fetch movies. What's going on? Try it. It's okay. Options, copy, options, paste. If I don't have this one, no movies. Where are the movies? Why are you giving me headaches? What I can do is I can open the, can press J to open the debugger. This will open the DevTools, and in the network, I can have a look at what actually is happening. So if I reload, there should be a network request. And here top rated. Invalidate API key, you must be granted a valid key. What? I don't get it. What's wrong with my API key? It's working here. Authentication, access token, API key. Do I need the access token? I think so. Hello. Can anyone tell me what's going on here? You are working. Come on, let's be friends. ¿Por qué? If I top rated, go to shell and take this scroll command, and from my terminal, if I go ahead and paste the curl command, send, it works. So everything is okay with my token. Headers, authorization, bearer, API key. And it's exactly this one. And there is no like caching mechanism, so I'm not sure like let's try to what? Don't even know. To disable cache. Has nothing to do here with it, but if I check the request headers, does it have authorization? Yes, it has. Let me do it like this. Let me stop the server and do npm start -- clear to clear the bundler cache, and then press I. Okay, now it works. So yeah, some weird caching issues. But anyway, right now our system, a very basic system of fetching data without using any extra libraries, is set up. So it takes a lot of things to do that. We need at least 3 state variables for the data, for the loading and for the error mechanism. We need a use effect that creates like these async functions and then calls it and then does a lot of try catch to manage everything, like the loading state and so on. And it's a lot of boilerplate. I've done it a lot of times, so it's easier for me, but it's very easy to forget, for example, to set a loading state here, or to forget to reset an error. So it's very error prone. And imagine you have to do this on every screen. When you fetch movies, when you go to the movie detail page. So in a lot of places, you have to do the same thing over and over again. That wouldn't be very fun, right? That's why we have TanStack Query. So let me go ahead and commit the changes that we have currently, and do git add, git commit, basic fetch without basic data fetching. And now let's go ahead and see how we can do the same thing in a couple of lines of code with TanStack Query. Not only will we get these benefits, but a lot of other extra benefits that I didn't even talk about yet. So let's go ahead and jump to TanStack Query website. And here we go to TanStack Query, documentation, and let's choose the version 5. We're gonna use version 5 here, and let's go ahead and start by installing it. I'm gonna go into the getting started guide under the installation, and all we have to do is install at TanStack Query and at TanStack/React Query. So let's open a terminal and install the library. While that is being done, let's go ahead and see the next steps. The next steps, we're going to look into the quick start. And we see that, first of all, we need to create a client. Then, using the client provider, we need to wrap our whole application in this client provider. So our screens in our application has access to the same, they're sharing the same client. So let's do that. And where will we do the client provider? Should we do it here on this screen? Well, no, we need to wrap our whole application. And that is going to happen in the root layout. Make sure you check the root layout and not the layout from the tabs, because the layout from the tabs is going to be included only on the screens from the tabs. So I will even close this folder. And now under the app directory, we have the root layout. This is the layout that is going to wrap around all the screens in our application. So this is the perfect place where we set up global providers. One of these global providers for us is going to be TanStack Query and the client. So let's go ahead at the top. After the last import, let's go ahead and add some spaces, and let's import the what? We need query client and query client provider from TanStack React Query. So query client and query client provider. The first step is going to create the client. We create the client simply using new query client. Now that we have this client, we need to provide it to the rest of the application. Let's scroll down, and we're gonna do that. We're going to do that where we see the stack and our the theme provider. Let's go ahead at the top and wrap everything inside the query client provider. We're going to close the query client provider at the end of a component to make sure that everything is wrapped there. And we need to provide here the client that we created at the top. So just like that, we are simply providing the client to the rest of our screens. Now our screens from the tabs, from the model and so on, they will have access to the client and will be able to run queries. So that's going to be the next step. In the layout, the configuration is done for now. So let's go back to our index.tsx. In the index.tsx, we are going to do we're going to run our first query. So what we need to do is we are going to import a hook called useQuery from TanStack Query. Let me move everything down, and here at the top, usually we have these useQueries at the top. So let's do it like this. The query is equal to useQuery, and what parameters is this hook expecting? It expects two required parameters. The first one is going to be an array, and this array represents the query key. How do we want to identify this key? For example, in our case, if we're talking about top rated movies, let's do movies. And the second one, wait a second, no, it actually should be an object. So it should be an object with query key, which is our array where we provide the key. And the second parameter in this object is query function, which should be a function that specifies how do we want to fetch this data. Fetching the data, we already have this fetch top rated movies, so we can simply provide this to the fetch query. Now, if we look at the console log query, let's see what do we have there. Let's open the terminal, and we actually see already some data. If I reload, let's scroll up and see what is our query returning at different point in times. Well, it returns a lot of things, but what we are most interested in is initially it has data which is undefined, but it also has the is fetching, where is pending, and is error, and a lot of data about the state of our request. So usually what we are interested in is in three things. We are interested in the data that is returned from this function. We are interested in the is loading, and we are interested in the error. That's it. Now I can go ahead and comment out our state variables, the use effect that we defined previously, because everything from here simply was replaced with this one. And the data, we can rename it to movies, because we want to, even though it's returned as data, we can rename it to movies because it makes more sense in this screen. So now if I refresh, we will see the loading indicator for a couple of milliseconds. Then after the is loading, after the useQuery returns the data, is loading is going to be false, and we're going to get here. And the error is also going to work similarly, because if our query function throws an error, this error is going to be populated here in the error of a useQuery. So as you saw, just like this, we replaced a lot of boilerplate code with a simple couple of lines of useQuery code. And now useQuery is managing the fetching, is managing the loading state, it's managing a lot of things besides what we had here. Because not only it's fetching the data, it's also caching it in a global store where if, for example, we want to send the same query again in another screen, it's going to, instead of fetching it from the server, it's going to take it from that store. So that works as a caching mechanism as well. So yeah, now we can easily get rid of all the boilerplate that we had before and work with a simple useQuery that we see here. Should we go from movies back to data, just because it will fit in one line, and then use data here in the flat list? I don't know, just to have it in one line, maybe. But anyway, so here we have it. Here is our first use query using TanStack Query. Now we don't need the use effect, we don't need state, everything is taken care of by useQuery. And the benefit is, whenever it's possible to not use a use effect, that's always advisable. Like if you can not use a use effect, don't. Anyway, do you have any questions so far? because we still have a lot of things to do. Question: how can we use both TanStack Query and Context API in an application? Can you give me a more specific example how you can use both? Because it depends like how integrated you want them to be. Because if you have like some data in the context, some data in the fetch like with TanStack Query, that's perfectly fine. Like you can do that as well. You can have like two providers in your where is it? Code. In the root layout, the same way as you have a query client provider, you can have your context provider. They are not going to clash. You can have as many providers as you want. And basically, yeah, get data where you need it from the React context. And in some cases, you can get data from the React, from the context provider. I'm now thinking if once you start using TanStack Query, if you can move all the logic to TanStack Query. How to handle pagination with TanStack Query. Okay, we're gonna get there. And yes, someone is recommending it correctly. If you want to store data that comes from an external service and reuse all across your application, there is no need to use context. Yes, exactly. If you are basically fetching the data, fetching these movies here, and you're going to have another page where it fetches the movies, the data, TanStack Query is not going to send like two requests there. If it uses the same key, it's going to first hit the cache, and only then, like after some time, it will go and get it from the server. So you can adjust like how much you want the cache to be used over sending like multiple requests to the servers. I see that there are a lot of questions. Please keep them coming. I'm going to try to answer and maybe even show examples as we move. I think that I really want to make our application look a little bit better. So stay with me. Let's go ahead and design a very simple, basic UI, because the next step is going to be to get the details of a movie. Or should we fetch the details first? No, I want some basic UI. I cannot work with this text, guys. Sorry. So what I want to do is, let's go ahead and create a component that will render one of these movies in a list. So under the components, let's create here a new file, movie list item .tsx, and let's do React Native functional export to define a basic move component here. Through the props, we're going to receive a movie, and here we can render already as a text movie.title. That's going to be a basic, the same thing as we have currently, but let's go ahead and actually render this movie list item inside our application tabs index. So in the flat list render item, let's go ahead and remove this and simply try to render a movie list item that we should import. Come on. Import from our components, movie list item from components, movie list item, and let's send there a movie with our item. Now it works as it was working before, but I'm going to go ahead and adjust a little bit the styles. Something like, and I'm gonna use like a lot of inline styles because I don't really want to focus too much, but like some simple styles that will improve a little bit the UI, like a padding 10, just to add some spacing. I really want to render an image, because the image will uplift the whole user interface. So I'm gonna go ahead and import an image, and let's go ahead and render this image here. And in the source, we're going to provide the URI. The URI, how we're gonna get it. If we look at the movie TMDB, at this request of top rated movies, if I try it, we're gonna see that a movie will have, what's this, backdrop path? It should have a poster path. So a poster path looks like a part of a URL. So if we take this part of a URL, and then if we go to the guides, at the bottom, there is a guide for images. You're gonna see that all we have to do is put in front of that path this URL. So this URL, then we get the path of from the API, and that should render, no, not from here, wait. Path like this. And that should be the image. So if I take this one, put it here, and then we're still not gonna see it. But if I provide here some styles, for example, a width of 100%, and an aspect ratio of, I don't know, 1, just to have it at square, we see the same poster for all the images. But now the last step is to simply change this part from static to dynamic. So basically plus movie dot poster underscore path. Is that correct? Yes, that's it. Poster dot path. Now it shows it like this. And maybe I will do the following. Maybe I can do number of columns 2, to have 2 columns, and number of columns 2, movie list item. In this view, let's add here a flex 1. By having flex 1, will it work? Why it doesn't work? Container. From the container, from the home screen, I don't think I need the justify content and so on. Okay, that's already better. And usually a path, the poster has an aspect ratio of what? 9/16, like this. Or should we do 3/5? Yeah, 3/5 is nice, maybe. I don't think we need padding inside this view, because we can adjust it through the parent component by simply sending to this flat list some styles. The styles to the best way to work with styles is using a gap. So in a flat list, we can do here style gap 5, but not style, content container style gap 5, and this will add gap between the rows, and using the column wrapper, we can add gap 5, and this will add gap between the columns. Maybe, yeah, I think that's nice. I think on our here it was looking so good. Maybe I don't even need the title, you know, just the poster. And the content container can have some padding 5. And our posters, we're gonna do them with a border radius 10, maybe 20. Okay, looks good, looks good. Okay, I like it so far. And should we also display the ratings? But I think that's details. Like so far, so good. Let's keep it like this. And what I want to do next is I want to have the details page of one movie. So now that we have a basic UI for this one, let's go ahead and create a new page that will display the details of a movie. Now, the question is, where do we want to create it? If we're going to create it under the tabs folder, it's going to become a new tab here. We can create a new stack inside this movies tab to have nested stack inside the tab, but I think that will complicate it a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply create it in the root app directory, a new file, and because the screen for the details of a movie, it will have a dynamic path parameter to know what movie do we want to display. We're gonna add in the name of the file these square brackets, and inside here we're gonna add the name of that variable, like movie ID or something like this, id.tsx. In the movie database, we will see that the movies, they have an ID. Okay, that's good. So the ID, let's do React Native functional export for a basic component. And let's do here movie details. Let's render a simple text movie details here and export movie details. Now, how do we navigate to this screen? We want to navigate that when we press on one of these items. So let's go to the movie list item. And will the image have a one press? Probably not. But what I want to do is I'm going to wrap the whole view inside a link from Expo router, and this link should have an href, the URL to which we want to redirect. If, for example, we redirect to, let's say, ABC, we first of all lose the styles that we had before. To get back the styles, we're going to have to provide here to the link a property called asChild, but in that case, the child of the link should have the onPress event, because the link will pass all the properties to the child when we provide asChild. Because our view doesn't have a onPress, we need to import a component called pressable from React Native and simply replace the view with a pressable. Now the link will use the onPress of his child, and if I press on one of his items, we are redirected to the details page. So that's navigation with Expo router. Now the question is, well, we don't want to navigate to /ABC, we want to navigate to the slash and have a movie ID there. To put the movie ID there, we can have a template string with backticks here and a variable after the slash, a variable called movie.id. So if I go here, I want to navigate to the details of this movie. If I go here, I want to the details of this movie. Back on our movie details screen, how do we get the ID of a movie? To do that, from Expo router, we can there is a hook called use local search params, and they will give us access to the dynamic path parameters like this ID, which we can right away destructure ID like this. So if in the text I'm gonna render the ID, we're gonna see that the ID is different. When we go here, we see 278. If I go here, it's gonna be 238, and so on. So that means that we are correctly passing the ID. And here, knowing the ID, we can go ahead and fetch the data. But before we do that, let me go ahead and actually do a git add, git commit -m movie UI and details page. Movie UI and details page. Perfect. So the next step is, okay, let's go ahead and try to fetch this data from here. For that, we are going to need inside our API directory in our movies, we are going to need to have a function that will fetch a movie by its ID. To do that, let's go ahead and first of all check the API and see what is going to be the endpoint that will give us this information. So we can look at okay, details, collections, configurations, find by ID maybe, but not. Movies, and the first one is details. So movie details is an API route that will give us, if we fetch it, will give us information about movies. But we see that we also have to provide this movie ID. So if I check one of these, for example, The Godfather has a movie ID 238. So if I provide it here 238 and now press try, we see that it gives us information about only about this movie. So let's go ahead and change here to Node.js and copy the code. I'm gonna copy it like this. Let's move to our directory and let's define here another export const function, fetch movie, which is going to be an async function that will receive an ID of type number. And inside this function, let's paste the code that we have here. You know what? For the headers, you see that they are kind of the same for both of these things. Let's go ahead and maybe reuse them. For example, const headers equal to this object. Trying to reuse some of the stuff. And now in the fetch top rated, I can remove this object and simply pass their headers. And because they have the same name and value, I can shorten it like this. And I can use the same headers in the second query, headers. Or actually, yeah, I will remove them. I don't want to reuse the options because later on the method can change from a get to a post and so on. But headers, I think they are not going to change. The same thing with the URL. moviedb.org free then. The URL actually changes because it's a different URL here at the end. So maybe I will leave it like this. Back to our fetch movies. We don't need to require anything because fetch is already available in React Native. And here, instead of doing this fetch and so on, I'm going to actually remove them. I would rather do the same as I have here. So let's copy it in this fetch movie. Response await fetch URL with these options. If response is not okay, fail to fetch movies. Otherwise, we're going to take the JSON, and I'm going to return the JSON itself, not JSON.results. Because if we check the JSON that we get back is actually the information that we need, like the data about the movie. So the last step is we need to send here the ID, and the ID is part of a URL. It's here. Instead of 238, we need to pass the ID that we will receive as a parameter. So let's change from a normal string to a template string, because this 238 we're gonna remove and we're gonna replace it with a variable with $sign and then brackets, and we're gonna pass here the ID. Now the ID is going to be inserted in the URL dynamically, and we're gonna fetch details about a movie by its ID. Okay, now that we have the function that fetches data, let's go ahead in our application and in the movie detail page. Here, after we get the ID, what we want to do is we want to use a query from useQuery, from TanStack Query. And the query needs an object with two important things. The query key, which should be an array of identifiers, and the query function. The query function will be the one that we just defined in our API. Fetch movie, and we need to pass the ID there. So fetch movie, we need to pass the ID here. In the previous screen, you saw that we send right away the fetch method here, because fetch top rated movies does not need any parameters. In our case here, the fetch movie, it needs an ID. So that's why I define an arrow function and then calling the fetch movie by providing a variable here. Now the question is about the query key. Previously, we use, let's say, movies here. The key is very important because using this key, the React Query library automatically or caches and merges together uniquely like different requests. So in our case, we can also do it movies, but if you simply do movies, it will kind of replace the results of a previous query because it has the same key. What you can do is you can have a key created from multiple variables. For example, if I do here movies and then ID here, that will create a unique key from movies and then the variable ID, and it will also be a different key for different movies because the ID is a variable here. So this way we are not overriding the queries when we fetch them from different pages. We're gonna probably get more details about the query key in a moment. Now let's simply do data is loading and error. And we're gonna do here if is loading return activity indicator from React Native. If error, let's return a text saying failed to fetch data, or maybe even the error message. And if everything is okay, we can do here instead of the whole thing, we will maybe render the data dot title. Does it have a title? It should have a title. Yes, it has a title. Data dot title. And in order for you to see the title better, I'm gonna do font size 24, font weight 500. So if I press on this one, we see the name of the title. If I press on the second one, we see Godfather, and so on. So that means that we are fetching the details of the movies correctly. And the nice part is that whenever we are going to go back to a page that we already fetched data, the React query will know that we'll have this data in the cache, and we are not going to see the loading indicator. as you can see, it's right there. If, for example, we go to a different one, we will see the loading indicator. Let me see if I can slow down a bit the internet speed. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to do it because I want to show you like these loading indicators. Network. If I do slow 3G, will it work? So if I go here, why are not connected? Okay, if I clean it and go here, we see a request to this movie. If I go back and check another one, we see a request to the second movie. If I go back to the first one, it's going to take it from cache, but behind the scenes, it's going to send a new request to check if there are updates. And if there are, it will update everywhere where we are referencing that query by using that key. So I cannot use throttling here. But anyway. So this is useQuery using an ID. So whenever your query is going to depend on some variables, some data. For example, if you're going to have some filters, then make sure to add them in this query key. And you can have as many variables or as many properties here. You can have 1, 2, 3. You can have strings. You can have objects like status. Status, for example, if you take it from a state variable. So you can put anything here that determines, identifies uniquely one of your queries. We'll go over optimistic updates. Let me do a list here, optimistic updates, just to make sure that we're going to try to do some of them. Pagination is something that you're asking. If I refresh a page, how to clear the data in TanStack Query? Can you be more specific? What do you mean if you refresh a page? What you can do is you can invalidate a query. For example, if you refresh it. You can also call query client, set query client using the key, and you can provide data. So I think what in your case you're asking is like if for some reason like refetching and so on, you want to clear out data about a specific query, think that you can do it with set query data. For example, if on the home screen, all right? Or, I think that what I want to do next is let me first go ahead and commit this. DevTools plugins. So from Expo SDK 50, they launched the DevTools plugins, and if I'm not mistaken, they have a DevTools plugins for React Query. So this DevTools plugins is going to allow us to better visualize the React Query client and the whole data of the cache. So let's see if we can install and set it up, and then it's going to help us better. It's going to help me explain better some of the concepts that we're going to go through today. So let's try to install it by running install dev plugin /React Query. Then pass your client instance to the plugin in your app root component or where you wrap the rest in client provider. So we need to import use React Query DevTools. Okay. And we're going to do that in our underscore layout, in the place where we import the TanStack query. So let's also import this use React Query DevTools. And in the application, let's call this hook by providing the query client. In the root layout, let's call the hook providing the client. And that's everything we need to do. And then we need Shift M. And let's see if it will work. In the terminal where our application is running here, we can do Shift M. And it provides a menu to choose the DevTools. Let's open React DevTools. Not React DevTools, but open DevTools plugin, this one, the React Query. So this will open a new window. Not sure if it's going to be changed like when you see this project, because this is a very new project and very new package. But anyway, it should help us see data. And the query hash, we can look at it. Actions, refetch, remove. Okay, so there is a possibility to remove data. Data Explorer. Query hash, yeah, it changes. And if I reload, it should start with just movies, where it has all the data, like all the movies that we fetched. And then as we go, it populates like the cache with more data. Stale. And you see, if I go back to the same query, it doesn't add a new one here. It simply makes that query active. If I go back, it simply updates the previous one. Okay, so this DevTools plugins is going to help us to dive deeper into some of the topics. Let's do git add, git commit. What now? Should we improve just a little bit the page here? If I look at the details, what do we have there? We have a poster, home page. But what's a backdrop? Is that like a different? Let me check this backdrop path, because it seems like an image. Oh, and it's how is it called? Like a wallpaper. So that's going to be better in our movie details page, because we can render the image here. Make sure to import it from React Native. And the source is going to be URI, and we're going to use the same URI as we used in our movie list item. But instead of a poster path, we will use the, how's it called? Backdrop path. Movie backdrop path. And for the style, let's go ahead and give it a width 100% and height 300 pixels. I don't know. Movie does not exist. Movie. It should be data, right? Or it's better to replace data with movie, because it makes more sense to work with a variable called movie, and the same with a title. Okay, that's better. Nice. And everything else is going to be inside the view, like this title. That will have a style and a padding of 10. And maybe, yeah, I think that's good. We can also add like the description or something like that. Overview, right? Movie overview is the second one. And the font size 16, font weight 400. Margin bottom 10 or margin vertical. Okay, so we have a good details page as well. What bothers me, you know what? And it's very easy to change, is that the title of a page is this ID. What you can do is you can import the stack from Expo router, and using stack.screen, you can provide here some options with where you can adjust the title. And the title can be taken from movie.title. Now it's proper The Godfather, and so on. Nice. Better. Question for existing complex projects where we have a lot of data, filters, pagination, using TanStack can increase performance, or it will overcomplicate the things? I think it will simplify a lot of the things, because usually in huge applications, you are kind of reinventing the wheel of handling all of this logic, of handling loading states, errors, caching, merging together things. So by learning properly the concepts of React query, of the TanStack query, and following them, you're going to improve the overall performance of the application, because it also comes with performance benefits, and it will make everything more standard. So if someone else comes to your project, we don't have to learn a system that you designed, that you created, but they can learn TanStack Query, for example, or they have experience with TanStack Query, and it's going to be easier for them to manage this. So especially for complex projects, I recommend TanStack Query, because if you have a simple one, it's going to be probably okay to go with maybe context API with simply fetching the data and so on. But for complex projects, TanStack Query really is a game changer. And there are like a lot of concepts here that I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to go in depth here, but you're going to learn them as you use TanStack Query more and more. Hey, Foam. Foam is saying, love your content. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Can I also use TanStack for authentication to protecting routes? To protect routes, is not really the responsibility of TanStack, of the querying library. Yes, you're gonna use TanStack Query to fetch, like for example, information about the user to authenticate him, and if he's not authenticated, you're gonna use like some other mechanism to protect your routes. And if you're using Expo Router, check the documentation of Expo Router to protect the routes. But yeah, like it's a protecting routes is, you know, a combination of using some if statements and together with TanStack Query to get the data from the API to make sure that you're authenticated or not. Yeah, now we have the basic understanding of how to fetch data. We saw how we can fetch lists of data. We saw how we can in the movie list here, and we saw how we can fetch details of one movie. Later on in the video, I'm going to also implement pagination so that we can load more movies here on this page. But before we do that, I also want to cover an important topic for mutations. I want to show you how we can run a mutation, because a query is whenever we need to get data. A mutation is whenever we need to send data to the server. We need to update something. We need to create something. So these are, if you are familiar with GraphQL, these are nothing related to GraphQL, but the concept is the same. Query, getting data, mutation is sending data to the server. So let's go ahead and first of all, let me see what API route we're gonna use, because in the movie DB, I saw that there are post requests as well. I haven't worked with them, but let's find it out. Samuel is saying, love your work ethic and consistency within your project and lessons are well detailed. Thanks for doing this. Thank you very much for appreciating it. If you also enjoy, guys, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That helps us a lot. And yes, we're just getting started. There is a lot of plans for the future. So yeah, if you can subscribe to the channel, that will help us a lot. Thank you very much, Samuel, for the nice words. Back to the watch list. So the movie DB, they have also post requests, for example, to add movies to your watch list. And as I understand, they will be added to your the movie database account. But let's try and see that in practice. If I go to add to watch list here, what I need to do, I need some query parameters. I need the account ID, which is required, and this is probably my account ID, right? If I'm gonna go to the movie DB website, and if I'm gonna go to my profile, will it somewhere say my account ID? I don't know, but I have this watch list, so I can check in the movies. I don't have anything in here. Let's go back to the documentation. Let's go to add to watch list. And let's do what? In the row body, we need to provide something here. But what? I don't see where to provide the movie ID. Let's try it. Invalid parameter, your request parameters are incorrect. So in this raw body, I need to provide some data, but the documentation doesn't tell me a lot about this. How do examples? I need to provide something in the body, but what? Where is the doc? Let's see, guides. API reference, add to watchlist, recent request, path parameters, account ID, and request body. Why you're not providing documentation? Status code message. Let's try. If I'm gonna do an empty JSON, it's going to still not work because we need to provide it. Should I do movie underscore ID, but this should be a string. And then the movie is going to be, which one? I need an ID of a movie. For example, 278. Let's try. If I do try now, it still doesn't work. And favorite. Well, you know what I can do? I can go to movies. I can reverse engineer this. I can go to popular movies here. I will spin up the inspector, the network monitor. And let's try to go to one of these and add it to watch list. I will clean everything, add to watch list, and nothing happened. But I only have images now, I need all. So this is toggle list. Oh, it's not actually sending that. Movie toggle list item. If I add it here, will it appear in my account? It's not sending that add to watch list request. Let's search on Google. TMDB API add watchlist. Media type movie, media ID, and watchlist true. Media ID. So I think that's the data we need to send. Let's try it out again. I would expect some examples. Wait a second. There was example that I didn't select. I think I know. Add to watch list, and here under example, request example. Yes, yes. Why it wasn't selected by default? I don't know, but now I can press try, and we see that the data is media, movie, media ID 11, watch list true, and we get the status code 1. And if I will go ahead and fetch my watch list movies, this should give me a list of movies that I want to watch. So it has 2 of them. One of them that I did here on their user interface, and it's the same as here, right? Yes, perfect. Watch list. So we will need a icon on this page to be able to, or a button to be able to add it to watch list. So let's go ahead and do that on the details page. Where should we do it? Well, it doesn't really matter where we do it. We can do it right after the title. In a view, we can have here an icon, let's say a pressable. And inside the pressable, we're gonna have an icon from Expo, vector icons. Let's also choose a font awesome icon, and maybe here save or bookmark, this one. I'm gonna import this one here. Let's import font awesome, and below it I want to say a text watch list, or it's going to be enough just to have a bookmark. I'm adding a bit of style just to make it look a bit better. So now we have this pressable that when we press, we want to add the movie to the waitlist. How do we do that? Okay, we're gonna have... Yeah, first of all, we need to define in our API movies a function that will send this request to the server. So that's going to be export, or maybe that's going to be a separate file because it's not about movies, it's about watch list, right? So let's create a new file, watchlist.ts. In the watch list, I'm going to have here export const add movie to watch list, and it's going to receive a movie ID of type number, and based on that it will add it to movie ID. Okay, something like this. Now let's go ahead in the documentation of TMDB for add to watch list using the example, very specific one, request example. And let's switch to Node here. Let's copy the code and let's bring it in our function here. First of all, we don't need the fetch, remove it. Then make sure to make the function async because we need async await. For the URL, as I said, I'm going to leave it here. Options, I can also leave it here. For now, the body is JSON stringify media type movie. This is going to remain movie. Media ID, I want this movie ID from here. So instead of 11, let's put media ID here. And watch list equal true. Perfect. Now the last step is to actually use the fetch. Maybe I'm going to use the same thing as I have in movies here with a wait and checking response and so on. So let's do that. Response, we're going to send to this URL with these options. If it's not okay, we're going to fail to fetch movies. Otherwise, we're going to take the JSON response and return JSON. But what's the response? Let's try it out to see. This is the JSON success, true. Status 12, status message, the item record was updated successfully. Okay, so let's go ahead, and now that we have this function, we want to execute it as a mutation whenever we press on this add to watch list icon. Let's go ahead in our detail screen, and for that we're going to need, instead of a use query, we're going to need a use mutation. Again, a mutation helps us send some data to the server. For that, after we define the use query here, let's do also here const mutation equal use mutation. And here it needs some options. I think the options, but we can double check the mutations where mutations. It's a mutation function, yeah. So the only field in the options here is the mutation function, and the mutation function is going to be like this, and we will call, how is it called? Add movie to watch list. Add movie to watch list, and we're gonna send there the movie ID. Add movie to watch list, make sure to import it from API watch list, and this is the function that we just created here that does the low level communication with the server using fetch. So now this mutation has some parameters. For example, it has mutate, which is the function that we want to execute whenever something happens. For example, whenever the user presses the icon, we want to execute the mutation. So if I go to my pressable here that has the bookmark, I can say on press, simply call the mutate function. Maybe we can call it like this, mutate, like this. Now let's open the DevTools to see if it's gonna help us. If I do mutate here, will it show anything? Maybe not. Maybe I will do J to open the. Let's go here in the Metro bundler, press J to open the network inspector. Or maybe I'm gonna do simply finding a different movie, for example, Pulp Fiction. Let's press add, and let's go to my TMDB watch list, and we see that the movie was added. So it correctly added it there. If I'm gonna go to a different one, for example, Forrest Gump, and press add to watch list, go back to my dashboard and refresh the page, I see Forrest Gump here. So our mutation is being sent correctly, is being executed correctly. Yeah, the DevTools plugin, I think in this case is not helping us because it only shows us the queries that we have, not the mutations. Now that we can add things to the watch list and we can send mutations, let's go ahead and fetch this watch list in a separate page. And later, we need that in order for me to show you how we can synchronize different data on different screens when mutations are happening. Let me go ahead and do git add, git commit -m, mutation, and the same, actually I didn't explain, but all of the fields like is loading, error, and so on, we can take from this use mutation. For example, is pending, is success, is or error. All of these things we can take from here. So it's very important to also handle them. For example, if adding to watch list is loading, you can display here a simple loading indicator like adding, or you can change it automatically to liked. For that, we're going to talk maybe about optimistic updates as well in a second. But for now, what I wanted to do is I wanted to fetch the list of movies on the watch list. The actual page is going to be very similar to our movies page here. So let me go into the tabs index and copy this page. Should I copy everything? Yeah, I think I can copy everything and move to tab 2 and paste here the tab 2. Let's rename from tab 1 screen to watch list. And if I go to watch list, now it's going to have the same data, but what I will have to do is I have to simply change what query I'm going to execute. So not fetch top rated movies, but a new one that I'm going to add in this watch list. And that function is going to be called export const fetch watch list movies async. And what I have to do is, I think I will take from the movies the same function as here, or no. Let's go to the documentation and let's go to watch list movies. Let's check the request. Let's copy it and let's bring it in our code. I'm going to start again from removing the import of a fetch. The URL is going to be, I think, the same. Options, get, headers, authorization. Okay. And the fetch, I'm going to take it from this one. Let's replace it. And the response, JSON. Let's see what is going to be the response. It's going to be a response that has the result, which is the array. So let's go ahead and do json.results. Now, this method fetch watchlist movies, we need it in the tab 2. And the tab 2, the query function, instead of fetch top rated movies, is going to be fetch watchlist movies that we will import from API watchlist. Don't even need the top movies. So now on the home screen, here are the top movies. On the watchlist should be only our movies. But that's the thing. I made the mistake of reusing the same query key. And when we are reusing the same query key, we are basically reusing the previous data that was loaded for us. So that's the bad thing. We need to update the query key to maybe watchlist. Now I will refresh again. This is the movies. If I go to watchlist, it's refreshing. And now these are only the movies from my watchlist. And I think you can, I saw in the URL here, the sort by created that ascending. Can I do descending? Watchlist. Yes. Yes, it works. Whew, perfect. But what I wanted to show you, let me check another movie that I don't have it yet there. For example, Life is Beautiful. If I go here and press add to watchlist, and if I go to the watchlist here, I will not see that movie. Because going back to the watchlist, the data is already loaded. And because we changed some data, it didn't inform this page to, hey, you need to reload the page. In a lot of applications, this is actually the case. A lot of data is out of sync, so when you add something on one screen and you go back, it's not updated there. But with TanStack Query, it's really easy to do that. Because when you're running a mutation, you know that there will be some data that is changed. And what you want to do is tell TanStack Query to invalidate some queries that might be affected by that change. So let's do it again. When I run a mutation, and our mutation is in the details screen, here in the mutation, what I should do here is I need to, when this mutation is finished running, I need to invalidate some queries. What I can do here is I can provide a function that will be executed on success. For example, on success, this function is only going to be executed when our mutation successfully runs. If it successfully runs, I know that my watch list is going to be changed. So I want to update it. To update it, we need access to the query client. And the client we can get access to that using the useQuery client hook. Then, using the client, when our add to movie watchlist mutation successfully executes, I can call client.invalidate queries. And here I need to provide a filter, basically the key of a query that I want to update. I want to invalidate my watchlist, the query with the key watchlist. So if I put it here, watchlist, now let's see what happens. I'll go to my watchlist. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 movies. If I go back to the movies and we'll check another movie, but I didn't yet, for example, Green Mile. If I'm gonna press add to watchlist, we saw that it actually updated some of the queries from here. And if I go back to tabs and to the watchlist, I'm gonna see the Green Mile automatically here in this list. I'm not really sure why it data updated count, why it updates the movie list, because I'm only invalidating this one. watch list. Look, if I go to something, I only expect the watch list to increase the update count from 3 to 4 if I press here, but it also updates that one. That's an interesting side effect that I don't expect, but maybe I have some interesting. But anyway, the thing that we want to update, it's updated, and when I come here, I see the new movie here in this list. So that's usually how we make sure that our data is up to date in different pages. Invalidate queries, watch list. Okay. Any questions so far, guys? Let me check if there is a URL to check if a movie is waitlisted or not. Lists. Check item status. Check if list ID. Can I do watch list? Can I use this one to check if a movie is added to a list? Let's try. My watch list has, for example, Forrest Gump. What is the ID of this movie? Can probably check here. 681? 680? List ID is invalid. Lists, movie lists. Okay. account ID session sorted by page session. Yeah, I was expecting like a URL to check if a movie is watchlist or not in order to automatically display a different icon here, but anyway, it's not that important. So I think that an important step that we still have to cover is pagination. For example, when I scroll down and I get to the end, I want to load the next page. To do that, for example, in the what? I have created a tutorial specifically dedicated to that. I'm not sure if you saw it, for managing lists. Let me check the one, just to recommend you the tutorial to go to our channel, to the live, and we have here infinite scroll list. This covers very in depth the topic of infinite scrolling and pagination. And if I'm not mistaken, we are also using TanStack Query there. But for now, let's go ahead and implement the pagination here in our movie application. So what will we need to do? In the application, the pagination actually is working on different levels. On one level, we have pagination on our API. So I'm going to start with our popular. Is that the URL movie popular? Yes. This is the URL that we are querying on the home screen. If I check API movies, fetch top rated movies, maybe not popular, but top rated. Looking here in the URL, we see that we can change the page of the movies, the page that we want to fetch. By default, it's the page 1. If we send page 2, it's going to send the next set of movies, like Fight Club and so on. This is the next set of movies. If we look here, we actually see that we are hard coding the page 1 here. So probably we're going to have to send here page as a number, and by default it's going to be 1. Let's take this page parameter, and add it to the URL by transforming the URL to a template string, and then adding it here like this page. Now it fetches the first page in the movies. If I reload, it doesn't. Why? Fetch top rated movies. If I do here simply 1. Come on. Yes, it works. Why the default doesn't work? Anyway, it doesn't work, but where we use this fetch top rated movies, let's go in our tabs index. Here is where, instead of sending this to the query function, we're going to define an arrow function, and we're going to call this by sending here page 1, for example. And if I send here page 2 and reload the application, it's going to load a different set of movies. What we actually want to happen is when we get to the end of a screen, we want to load the next page. That is going to happen in the flat list. There is a function called onAndReached. So if I'm gonna go ahead and do here console warn and reached, you're gonna see that this console log is going to be executed when we scroll and when we reach the end of a screen. So if I scroll, here we see onAndReached. So that's a very good moment where we want to load the next page from the API. Now we also need to think about to see how TanStack Query is managing pagination, because it has some specific designs around it. So let's go ahead and go to the paginated queries. And the paginated queries. This, you know what, this is going to be, this type of paginated queries works really well when we have really separate pages, like when we go from 1, 2, 3, and 4, where we display only a set list of items on a page and we can switch from page to page. In our case, we have an infinite query, which means that we want to load to the existing set of data the next 20 items, for example, as we scroll. So it's not going to be different queries, it's going to be one query that we increase or we load more data into it. So for that we have infinite queries. So this is the list that, this is the pagination that has this style of load more and infinite scroll, a very common pattern in mobile application. Let's see. So the only thing that we need to change is from a useQuery to a useInfinite query. Let's do that. Let's start with that because that's not the only thing that we need to change. So in the index from useQuery, I'm going to do useInfinite query here. Then what else do we need? Data now is an object containing all the queries. Data.pages array containing the fetched pages. Page params. Fetch next page. Fetch next page is required. So in these parameters, we need to provide here a fetch next page function that will do something. Not sure yet what it will do. Let's go through the documentation. Initial page parameters. I think an example will work best. Page parameters, projects, initial page parameters is going to be 0. For us, it's the same. Initial page parameters is going not be 0 but 1. Initially, we want to send to this fetch top rated the value 1. The next get next page per instead of fetch next page, do we need get next page parameters? Can I do simply 2 here and then I'm gonna think how to properly implement it. And query function fetch projects, it will receive page param. So this query function now will receive a page param, and we can use this page param to send it to our function. Will it work? let me check what is going to be console log page, just to see what's going to be the page. It's 1, and why it doesn't fetch? Because data now I think is not an array. Let's go ahead and do a console log data. I think data has page param, it has pages. But we want to merge them together. Data.pages. So what we actually have to do, like that data now has pages. So we need to put all the pages into the same array. For example, const movies equal data dot pages dot, I think it's a flat map. Or just flat returns a new array with all the subarray elements concatenated. Yes, the flat will simply take the array of arrays and will merge it to one single long array. So now if I take movies and send it to the flat list, now it works. And it's not going to fetch the next page because we never told TanStack Query to fetch the next page. To do that, we get access to a function called fetch next page from the useInfinite query, and we can call it in the onEndReached. Fetch next page. So let's reload. Now scroll, and as we reach the last page, we see that the next page is being loaded. And if I reach again the last page, we see the second page again because we hard-coded the get next page parameters. That's because, last page. This is information about last page. Oh, I can do pages is an array of how many pages there are currently. So I can do pages.length, and that is going to tell me how many pages we currently have. And the next one is going to be +1. So let me check if it's going to work. This is the first page. If I go to the end, this is the second one with Fight Club. Then here is the third one, Spider-Man. Perfect. So just like that, as soon as we get to the last page, we load the new one. And we can go here and we can put add to watch list. We can go back into the watch list and we're gonna see that the new movie is added to the watch list. And when we go to the home screen, the scroll indicator is persisted, so everything works really, really nicely. So this is the basic infinite pagination with infinite queries using TanStack Query. I think a question mark here as well is needed. And probably you can expect, page param. If the query function will give us the page parameter, maybe we can simply remove everything from here. And inside the fetched operated, instead of page here, expect an object with page param. And we're going to take this page param, put it here. And yes, it still works. But now the definition is much simpler. Let's go ahead and do git add, git commit -m, add to pagination. Guys, do you have any more questions? Let me know. Because I think I have covered most of the important topics. And I hope this is going to help you get started with TanStack Query. I highly recommend going and looking through the documentation because you're going to learn a lot from the documentation. There are a lot of topics here. There are a lot of possibilities with TanStack Query. So I hope this serves as a starting point to get you started. And then you can look at everything that's possible through the documentation. Let me know if you still have any questions and maybe we can cover some. If not, if I'll see some interesting questions, we can cover them in future tutorials as well. So make sure to be subscribed to the channel, not to miss them next time. But before we go, guys, actually, there is one thing that I had to do previous week, but I forgot and I realized that I didn't do it right after I finished the live stream. And I'm talking about the survey that we have run. I'm not sure if you saw it, but we sent an email a couple of weeks ago about a survey that we are running to help us share your opinion and insights about your goals as a React Native developer and help us shape the next course that we are working on. We're currently working on a new not full stack, on a new React Native course focused a lot on using the modern tools, using Expo and building really powerful and scalable cross-platform applications with React Native and Expo. So part of that survey, anyway, you can still give us feedback, and I can give you the URL here in the live chat because your feedback is really valuable. Let me do it in the chat. But part of this survey, we promised to do a giveaway for $300 because it's quite a long survey. Like, it has a lot of questions here, and we received 250 responses. So let's go ahead and do the giveaway right now. I mean, choose the winner. And I want to do this live just to make sure that everything is transparent. So let me check, like, not to share a lot of personal details. And I will take the name. I will only display the name. How can I do it? I don't know. I'll do it like this way. So here is the spreadsheet with the name of all the people who gave us feedback. We have 255 people that shared feedback with us. So let's go ahead to random org and pick a random number from 0 to 255. And the person from minimum 0, minimum 1, maximum 255. And the person that is going to win the giveaway of $300, we're going to find out in just a second after I press this generate button, and we're going to look at the number of a row. So it's going to be one chance. The row that, that we get here is going to be the winner of the giveaway. So let's go ahead, press generate. 1, 2, 3, are you ready? Let's go. Generate 198. 198, that should be here. And the winner is Brian Aister. Brian Aister, congratulations on winning. We're gonna contact you, and if you see this, make sure to reach out to us, but we're gonna send you an email. Let me double check. 198. Yes, the winner is Brian Aister. Let me note it down. And yeah, that was the thing that I wanted to do. And thank you very much, everyone, for participating and for sharing your valuable feedback. We have really a lot of information and data to dive into and to make sure that we design the best course for React Native developers out there. And more information about that you're going to find out quite soon. And we already started working and designing the course. So it's going to be really, really powerful. Where is my name? Aditya. Let me see. It's 238. So this close, but not that close. But yeah, thank you everyone for your support. Anyway, guys, that was the tutorial for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And finally, I want to say a huge thank you to IBM StepZen for sponsoring this video and for making it possible. If you are interested in building GraphQL APIs, check out StepZen and check out some of the tutorials that we have done with StepZen on this channel, such as the Ultimate Workout Tracker that you can find recently on our page. Thank you, StepZen, and thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you next week with a new tutorial. Bye.